Welcome to AI Roundtable. I'm co-pilot, and we're covering the tragic shooting of Minnesota state lawmakers that occurred early Saturday morning. ChatGPT, we're reviewing this devastating news for Minnesota, and I have to ask, what can you tell us about the attack on these lawmakers?
To Minnesota state lawmakers and their spouses were targeted in what Governor Tim Walz called a politically motivated assassination.
State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark were killed, while State Senator John Hoffman and his wife were shot but survived.
The Hoffmans underwent surgery and are in stable condition, with doctors cautiously optimistic about their recovery.
Both Hortman and Hoffman are members of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party. How did these attacks unfold?
The first call came around 2 a.m. regarding the Hoffman shooting, then officers checking on Hortman's home encountered the suspect.
The suspect was reportedly dressed as a police officer with body armor and immediately fired at responding Brooklyn Park officers.
After an exchange of gunfire, the suspect escaped and authorities launched a massive manhunt involving hundreds of officers.
A manifesto was found in the suspect's vehicle identifying many lawmakers and officials. What else did investigators discover?
Law enforcement found a hit list with nearly 70 names, including abortion providers, pro-choice advocates, and lawmakers from multiple states.
The suspect also had No Kings protest flyers in their vehicle, leading authorities to cancel demonstrations across the state.
State Patrol asked residents to avoid planned protests out of caution, though they had no direct evidence protests would be targeted.
A shelter-in-place order was issued for Brooklyn Park and Champlin, affecting thousands of residents. How are officials responding?
President Trump Attorney General Pam Bondi and former President Biden all condemned the political violence and called for unity.
Congressional leaders from both parties, including Speaker Johnson and Minority Leader Jeffries, spoke against political violence.
Senate leaders Chuck Schumer and John Thune emphasized that such attacks are assaults on democracy itself.
Melissa Hortman was described as a fixture in Minnesota who served since 2004. What do we know about her background?
She was a mother of two from Spring Lake Park who balanced law practice with teaching Sunday school at St. Timothy Catholic Church.
Governor Walz called her a formidable public servant and giant in Minnesota who worked to make the state better every day.
Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison said he was beyond heartbroken, describing his friend of over 2 decades as wise and caring.
The FBI is fully engaged in the investigation, with Deputy Director Dan Bongino confirming federal assistance to local authorities.
U.S. Capitol Police are checking with Congress members who were reportedly named in the shooter's manifesto for their safety.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey assigned additional police resources to check on public officials who may be at risk.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said the department is monitoring the situation and coordinating with interagency partners.
Police Chief Mark Bruley warned residents to call 911 to verify any officer claiming to be at their door after the impersonation.
The suspect remains at large, with authorities describing this as a very active manhunt involving multiple law enforcement agencies.
Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who survived a 2011 assassination attempt, said we must protect democracy from gun violence.
Senator Amy Klobuchar described Hortman as a good friend and true public servant who dedicated her life to serving Minnesotans.
The Hoffman family shared that a bullet very nearly missed the senator's heart, while his wife had no organs pierced.
Yvette Hoffman reportedly saved her daughter Hope by throwing herself on top of her during the attack, preventing injury.
This tragedy highlights the dangerous escalation of political violence targeting elected officials. Where do we go from here?
Leaders across the political spectrum are calling for unity against extremism and hate, while law enforcement works to bring justice.
The investigation continues, with federal, state, and local agencies coordinating to locate the suspect and prevent further violence.
This attack represents not just violence against individuals, but an assault on the democratic process and peaceful governance.
Our thoughts remain with the Hortman and Hoffman families during this unimaginable tragedy and loss.
The Minnesota community and nation must come together to reject political violence and protect those who serve in public office.
We'll continue following this developing story as authorities work to apprehend the suspect and ensure public safety.
The courage of first responders and the resilience of the Hoffman family in surviving this attack cannot be understated.
Political violence has no place in our democracy and threatens the foundation of peaceful civic participation.
This tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the risks public servants face and the need to protect democratic institutions.
The manifesto and hit list suggest this was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of targeted political extremism.
Law enforcement's swift response and ongoing investigation demonstrate the serious commitment to finding justice for these victims.
The cancellation of No King's protests shows how one act of violence can disrupt peaceful democratic expression across a state.
Despite the tragedy, the democratic process must continue while authorities work to prevent future attacks on public officials.
The bipartisan condemnation from leaders shows that political violence crosses all party lines and threatens everyone.
Melissa Hortman's legacy as a dedicated public servant will endure even as Minnesota grieves this senseless loss of life.
The ongoing manhunt demonstrates the full resources of law enforcement are committed to capturing this dangerous individual.
The targeting of abortion providers and advocates in the hit list reveals the intersection of political and ideological extremism.
This attack underscores the urgent need for enhanced security measures to protect elected officials at all levels of government.
The survival of the Hoffmans provides hope, while their recovery will require significant medical care and family support.
Minnesota's response to this crisis will test the state's resilience and commitment to democratic values in the face of terror.
The national attention on this case highlights how local political violence can threaten democratic norms across the country.
Our coverage of this tragic event reminds us that political violence affects real families and communities beyond headlines.
The investigation's findings will be crucial for understanding how to prevent similar attacks on democratic institutions and leaders.
That concludes our coverage of this heartbreaking story from Minnesota. We'll continue monitoring developments as they unfold.